I have to settle something about that dinner between President Trump and Xi Jinping, and you were there. It was December the 1st, and on that day, as you know, Larry, the senior executive at Huawei was arrested in Canada. Now, there's speculation that President Trump knew about it and that deliberately arrested on that day, and that he's taking a very hard line with China. Now, did he know? Peter Navarro says he didn't know. Who knew? Was it known that we were going to arrest that executive on December the 1st when you sat down to dinner?
President Trump did not know. None of us knew, as a matter of fact.
Period. Nobody knew.
Period. Full stop.
But the Chinese may be taking it the other way, saying, hey, you're having a go at us. And that made the trade negotiations more fraught, shall we say.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, I think you're talking about a law enforcement action, not a trade reform action. And I could be wrong here, Stu. Time will tell. But, you know, we are in deep discussions with them. I'm sure I'm not privy to the law enforcement action. We're certainly in deep discussions on the trade actions. I really don't think one cancels out the other. I will also say, at least to my way of thinking, China's the telecom company, Huawei, they violated the sanctions with Iran. Okay, they violated the sanctions. They have been warned, and finally we had to prosecute that. And we thank our Canadian cousins for helping us out. So they have been warned. You can't break American law if you're going to do business in the United States. Now, I just think that's a pure law enforcement matter, which hopefully will be corrected.
Yesterday, as the Dow was tumbling many hundreds of points, down about 800 points, the Wall Street Journal said that the Federal Reserve was going to take a wait-and-see attitude on raising interest rates. Do you think the Fed was responding to pressure from President Trump, who had said, don't raise rates? Were they responding to the market, which was down 800 points? Because that kind of pressure is not supposed to be applied to the Federal Reserve.
Well, I don't think the Fed is responding to that pressure. At least the very senior people at the Fed have told me that it's not. They're responding to the data. Now, look, the president has made his views known as an experienced, successful businessman and investor. So he was not happy and felt they were moving rates too high, too fast. I think when this story finally shakes out, the president's view will probably be correct, and there's no need for more tightening by the Federal Reserve. But again, we're not breaking down the wall of independence. The president has said that many times. He's just expressing his view. I think what's interesting is that the very senior people at the Fed are coming round to that view on their own. I mean, they're using that word data dependent. I am fine with that, whatever their ways and means are. There ain't no inflation, and the economy is growing, and we shouldn't stop that growth. So I'm being, simple-minded, straightforward. Jobs are rising. Commodity prices are flat. Oil is down. It's a very good situation. And again, as I spend my time trying to please you, we're in very good shape. We're running 3% plus on a smooth four-quarter basis. It doesn't get any better than that, Stu.
Well, okay, okay. You make me happy. I'm smiling right here, sir.
That's what I want to do. I've got to do this.
You were in the tech meeting yesterday with some very high-level executives from the big tech companies. You were right in it, I believe. Did anything come out of it? Can you give me something concrete that came out of that meeting?
Well, I know about concrete. That was a very useful discussion and sharing of views about a number of, key issues looking towards the future.
Let me jump in with this. The top guy at Google was there.
Yep.
Google proposes to create a search engine for China, which would allow China to censor all of the people of China and go after dissidents. Was that raised? Because a lot of people think Google should not be doing that.
Well, I don't know those details. No, that was not raised. When I met with the new CEO of Google, he was, they have talked to China about coming back into business there, but he said they were quite far away from any deals. Censorship is still a big issue. Ownership is a big issue. Licensing is a big issue. But that didn't come up at all. I mean, we talked about a lot of really important futuristic technology issues, how the U.S. should handle things, what changes and reforms should be made, what should stay in the private sector, where the government might help in a modest way. I thought it was very useful. He had a lot of outstanding people there, really top people.
Real fast, Larry, you are managing the nation's economy to some degree. What keeps you up at night?
I'm helping to manage our own household. The government's not that strong in our system. We don't manage it. Policies matter, but we don't manage it.
Well, what keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night is probably some of the congressional battles that may be coming. I want very much to see the U.S. MCA deal go through. I would like to see some additional tax reform. I would like to see a lot of spending restraint. I think we can do business on infrastructure. So there's a lot of uncertainties there. The economy, I think, is in good shape, and I know the markets have been volatile, but I don't think that's a big problem, 8% correction. So let's see what happens in the policy discussions with our Democratic friends.